Meanwhile, the United Nations is calling on political leaders and their supporters in Nigeria to remain calm and refrain from acts that will lead to a breakdown of law and order in the country. Our correspondent Tessim Akende brings us an update from Jos.
Opposition political parties such as the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party and the New Nigeria People's Party have rejected the results, arguing the electoral process was fraught with irregularities. But the Independent National Electoral Commission says they can seek redress in the courts of law. Peaceful protests have been reported in some parts of the country, and leaders of the opposition parties have assured their supporters that they will challenge the results in court. Defense authorities in the country say they will stop at nothing to ensure that there is no breakdown of law and order. Nigerians waited anxiously for the results after days of collation following the extension of voting time in some parts of the country. This was blamed on the late arrival of election materials, malfunction of election devices such as the bimodal voter identification system, and voter intimidation. Tessim Akende, CGTN Jos.
Well, let's now get more from the ground. We're now joined by Deji Bademosi, and he joins us in the commercial capital of Lagos. Deji, great to see you. Now, of course, we know that opposition parties and civil society groups say there are disparities between official tallies and, of course, the data from polling agents. Is this the end of the road? Could we see a challenge in court? What's happening on the ground with the election right now?
Well, obviously, there's going to be a challenge in court. The opposition party, the Labour Party specifically, has said it is going to head to court, and I'm very sure the PDP too will follow suit, even though the PDP has actually not made any announcement as to what it plans to do next. But then the Labour Party says it is going to court to challenge the outcome of the election. So, and that's the only option open to them at this time. So they just have to go to court, present their case if they have any compelling evidence that the election was rigged against them. And if a judge is convinced that that's the case, then of course we would see the court act. So at some point down the road, the court obviously would have to make a pronouncement on this.
Well, Deji, we've been trying to sort of get a pulse on how Nigerians feel about the outcome of this election. We know that yesterday tensions seemed to be growing on the ground. We heard widespread reports of rigging across social media. Many said there was a lot of inaccurate data from those INEC results. And of course, we saw the spreading of fake news on these social media sites as well. So give us a sense or pulse on the mood on the ground today, and how is INEC responding to these allegations?
Well, the truth is that opinions are divided, Uche. Opinions are divided on the election. The supporters of the ruling party, the people who won now, are celebrating, and for them, the result reflects. It basically reflects the intent of the people, the way the people voted. But then the opposition party, which is always the case anyway, and it's normal, the opposition party, of course, is alleging fraud and rigging and all of that. So, so we've had supporters of Bola Tinubu, for instance, and the APC celebrating across the country, are happy that it turned out in their favor. And of course, the supporters of the opposition party naturally not happy, and that's the reason why they're heading to court. So, you know, in a contentious election like this one, this is what you expect to get. I mean, you look at the results, you see how close the results are. No doubt, as you have said, a very keenly contested election. We've never had anything like this before, and so it's just it's normal that you know, when you have a contentious election like this, opinions will be divided. So, but as I said, at the end of the day, I think this case will end up in court, and the court will probably have the final say.
Now, of course, Bola Tinubu will be inheriting an economy that is currently in crisis. It's struggling with widespread insecurity, And according to his election manifesto, he pledged to end subsidies and channel some of those funds to critical areas. But if you ask his critics, they say he hasn't been so clear on his plan for the economy and other issues such as his health, for example, going forward. So what are the people expecting from Tinubu now that he's been announced and based on the promises that he made?
Well, all the candidates actually presented, they presented their manifestos, and if you ask me, their manifestos would appear to be similar because all of them actually said basically that they were going to deal with the same problem, and you look at their approaches, it's difficult to say there's anything different in their approaches. Now, as to the challenges that the incoming president would have to deal with, obviously, if you ask me, I would say this is certainly not the best of time to be the president of this country. The new president would definitely inherit a huge challenge. You talked about the issue of petrol subsidies, certainly not going to be easy. This government, the current government now has fixed June as the terminal date for petrol subsidy. And Bola Tinubu says he's going to remove the subsidy. I mean, the other candidates also said the same thing. But, you know, it's one thing to say this thing, it's a different thing to carry it out. In the past, several governments in the past tried but failed to remove the subsidy. So that is obviously going to be a very difficult one. But, you know, it's something that at some point the government may have no choice than to bite the bullet. But other than that, we're also talking about an economy that inflation is over 20%. How do you bring down that inflation? Of course, that is something that the new government would have to come up with a solution to. Security challenge also is there, even though things appear to have improved, especially in the north of the country and the northeast in particular. But the problem has not gone away. So the new president would be inheriting that challenge. And no doubt there would be enormous pressure on him to solve it. And, you know, quite a number of challenges. Talk about the exchange rate, for instance. Exchange rate is really bad. The local currency continues to depreciate. Bola Tinubu has said he's going to deal with that. So everybody will be waiting to see what difference he would make, whether he's going to float, for instance, the currency. We just have to wait and see. A lot of challenges. Talk about the huge debt profile as well. You know what the size of the budget deficit is. That's another challenge that the new president would have to deal with. So quite a lot on the plate of the new president. And just as I said, not the best of times to be candid, Uche, to be the president of this country. Quite challenging. But then Bola Tinubu has said if there's anyone who can deal with these problems, he is the one.